I will start directly by quoting Leila Erturf, who is the head of sustainability at H&M. Um, what she says is that we are on an exciting journey with the global sustainability ambition, but it's challenging road as well. The sense of urgency is increasing, and we have to speed up our initiative here. To reach our climate goals, we have to work from different angles. It's not only taking conscious decisions, but also making the right investment. It's also supporting innovation and stakeholder engagements. We need to take a holistic look over our environment agenda because we need to work with the same equality for climate, for water, for biodiversity, for natural resources. And you can't prioritize one of them over the other because all of them are interconnected to create a better environment agenda for us. If you pull one of them out, the whole system collapses. We must therefore look at all the possible ways in which we can move forward on this path. You noted that today's talk is about cloud technology. Cloud technology is one of the ways Leila was talking about. So today we are not going to make a global speech on sustainability or on the cloud, but at our level, we will see how we can contribute in that way. So it's about sharing with you how innovation and investment on fabric consumption for the world of fashion and sportwear has a direct link with the sustainability strategy for the company. So my name is Roberto de Almeida. I'm in charge of the business development at Lectra for the Industry 4.0, and more specifically for the cloud nesting. For the past 4 years, I've been supporting our customer in the implementation of this innovative solution, and together we have discovered how this solution have transformed both their way of working and how they have helped them to meet some of these new challenges. By listening to this presentation, you will understand what the cloud brings in the context of material consumption compared to traditional solutions. Of course, for those who are not familiar with the subject, we will first explain what cloud nesting is and how it fits in the overall material consumption process of fashion and sportwear companies. We will illustrate with concrete examples the transformation that have been enabled by these new technologies. And we will see that from changes that seems insignificant at the beginning, we have seen a fairly spectacular transformation in some major brands, all directly related to a desire to better manage their consumption of fabric from the design phases. So let's start. And to make a long story short, I will start by drawing a parallel between the fashion world and the automotive industry. The consumption of material in the world of fashion or sport brands is equivalent of the consumption of fuel car for companies. What makes a car go is fuel. What makes dresses and shirts is fabric. In both cases, it is one of the most polluting elements. So by reducing the consumption of fabric, as we reduce the consumption of gasoline for our cars, we considerably improve our environmental impact. And in this way, by optimizing the consumption, we also reduce the cost. It is therefore essential to limit as much as possible all material losses. To better understand the challenges that fashion companies face concerning material consumption, we will start with the simplified story of the life of a fashion product from a material point of view. This will then allow us to better understand how the cloud intervenes and changes things. We will tell the story of a new dress. So, when we look at this product globally, Before starting to work, there are the merchandising teams. They will share company business objectives with design teams for a group of new products, including our new dress. Then the design teams will produce sketches for the new dress design to illustrate the volume and the detail desired. Then technical designers and pattern makers will select the fabric that is the most appropriate for the new design. Following design specifications, pattern makers and product development teams will make a new pattern, adapted to the selected fabric for the volume intended by the designer. This pattern allows us to make a prototype. An estimate marker is done also by these patterns, with this pattern, so that the costing teams can pre-cost the product. Design and product development teams review the prototypes and the pre-costing calculations to make adjustments until it meets design fit and cost requirements for approval. Products that do not meet this requirement are reworked or dropped entirely. As fabric lead times is very long, as soon as our dress is approved, we need to forecast the fabric requirements based on the projected volumes to reserve capacity early with the fabric suppliers. When the final orders are received, we consolidate them by delivery date and fabric to make markers in the corresponding colors, sizes, and quantities. Procurement teams use the markers to place final fabric orders with fabric suppliers for all fabric entries. And finally, the plants then receive the fabric directly from the fabric suppliers, and the next step is to cut and manage fabric with changes or problems with shading or flowed fabrics. So this is a simplified process that is representative of the overall scheme from a fabric point of view. It does not take into account the interaction between customers and suppliers, but this is not the objective of this presentation. And when we look at this process, there are several places where we need to have material usage information, or in other words, what the consumption going to be at every step. At the beginning, as we said, we need to know if the prices that have been defined by the merchandiser will be met. And we need to do some pre-costing. And to do so, we need to know how much fabric we will consume based on the first patterns. Then we need to have a real costing that is done by the costing team with more precise information. To reserve the fabric, we need also to know exactly how much we will use as fabric, because we cannot order too much and we cannot order too little. And finally, we also need to make markers in order to cut. So these are a lot of steps in our process where the calculation of fabric consumption is required. To answer this question about how much fabric do we use specific nesting tools. And these tools will take all the pieces that compose your dress, the front, the back, the sleeve, the collar, etc., and try to position them in our fabric like, a Tetris game, or a puzzle if you want. The objective is then to place all the parts with the minimum consumption possible in order to limit costs and losses. And clearly, this is not an easy task. It's possible to do it manually, but manually it's very long and it's reserved to specialists that are today very rare. And you can do it automatically with a better efficiency in general. But to do so, you need powerful computers that are dedicated to make those calculations. And there's a simple rule. The more powerful your computer is, and the more time you allocate to each product, the better the material consumption will be. Less material consumption means less waste at the end. And here we are. This is the first challenge around material consumption that begins here. A better efficiency means less fabric to order. And here we have the first and most obvious application of the cloud. If efficiency is related to machine power and computing time, then computation can benefit from the power of the cloud. Indeed, the computers that are used in the cloud are always up to date and the more powerful available, while your local computer can be 3 or 4 years old already. It's the same story as OneDrive, Google Drive, or iCloud, which have gradually replaced the hard drive that were limited in terms of storage by volumes that are presented in the cloud as unlimited in order to save your data. You all know that with your smartphones. When your smartphone is full of photo, for example, then the cloud is the solution. Well, in our case, it's very similar. The cloud allows to have access to top-level computing power and therefore to have better results in average. Once again, better results in average means less consumption and less waste. In addition, most companies experience peaks of activity. The reason can be multiple, but anyway, these peaks of activity must be managed with the resource available. A peak means more marker to calculate. As we have seen, more product to calculate with the same computer means less time allocated to each product, and therefore less efficiency at the end. The effect is simple. Less efficiency means more fabric to order and more waste. The cloud makes it possible to free the company from this type of limits and thus to limit the collateral effects of activity peaks on the environment. Because as you can multiply the number of servers that are used in the cloud, you're not anymore tied to this kind of constraints. If we look at the current situation to date, most powerful automating nesting tools are installed in the pre-production and in the production phases, because this is where they are the most needed. And you have to know that these kind of tools are very expensive and represent a significant investment for companies. They are therefore reserved and accessible only to specialists. But as you have seen, the question, what will be the material consumption, appears several times in our typical process. What's the impact of that? When the activities take place in the same site, the marker making team will be heavily solicited, often causing bottlenecks and conflict in terms of priorities. When procurement marker cannot be made quickly enough, procurement teams will not delay making purchase orders. Instead, they will purchase fabric based on historical data, which does not correspond exactly to the real fabric requirements, risking ordering too much or too little. And why can they wait? Again, because of the long lead time on fabrics. Again, the marker maker oftentimes becomes a kind of bottleneck in the process. The volumes of marker are too high during the peak period, so fabric efficiency are compromised. This is, of course, as an effect to the final cost and the profit on the product as well. Here again, this is an application of the cloud compared to the traditional model. Since usage is not longer tied to a local machine, it's easy to give access to multiple users. In a way, we democratize the access to this kind of service The same as Microsoft, Apple, or Google have democratized the backup of your data or photo on your phone with OneDrive, Google Drive, or iCloud. With the cloud, called Quick or Flex Offer by Electra, companies will be able to extend access to automatic cloud nesting to as many new users as they desire to better process large volume of marker activity. This change enabled them to process a steady flow of production marker and to respond period peaks in procurement activity for fabric purchasing without any compromise. So, what we have seen so far is how the power of the cloud makes it possible to increase computing capacity, not be impacted by activity peaks, and ensure the best possible efficiency to reduce overall fabric consumption. You can see some number of benchmark we did with some customer. And for those who don't know, 0.5, 2% of fabric saving does not seem a lot, but looking at the huge number of fabrics we have, this can be a very, very big impact. But this efficiency is the power is not the only way. There's more about the cloud. As we have seen, development in the cloud also allows to simplify access to nesting tools and democratize access. If I go back to my example of phones, it has become very easy today to automatically back up your photo in the cloud. Whereas before, you had to know a little bit about backupping data. You needed to plug your cable to your computer. You need to have a hard drive to do it. Not all the people were able to do so. But now, saving your photo is very easy. You don't even think about it. This kind of transformation that comes with the cloud, this is what happened also with our nesting application. We experimented a simplified version and put them directly in the hand of the pattern makers. At first, it was a kind of a test. This application called Quick Estimate are directly linked to the application that create patterns. It's called Modaris. It's not as sophisticated as the nesting application we talked about earlier, but it uses the same kind of engine and it's fully automatic. The solution allows to get a marker quickly in less than 1 minute while ensuring that the marker can be cut later. Of course, this marker will be optimized later in the process anyway. This experiment allowed us to discover the beneficial effect in terms of material savings. And there are two main cases. The first one and the most obvious one concerns the people who used the manual version of nesting. As I told you before, automatic nesting is very expensive, while manual nesting is much more accessible. It was a way to have a material consumption that is necessary for material reservation or pre-costing, material booking, sorry, but they did not want to invest in an automatic solution that was too expensive for them. When done manually, a nesting can take 30 minutes to 1 hour to be done. Obviously, the user left this estimation task aside until the model were finalized. Otherwise, it means they have to redo their nesting every time. Imagine to lose every time 30 minutes to 1 hour for every single small change. Unfortunately, this way of working has some negative impacts, the same as the one we talked earlier on. First, bottleneck in the process. But also, because you're not able to respond in time on what will be the pre-consumption of your patterns, the procurement teams needs anyway to book fabric. And at the end, it's transforming in more stock and random material booking. Quick Estimate drastically reduce this task and remove the bottleneck by giving visibility on consumption and consumption information beforehand. This is what happened at Balenciaga, for example, who by modifying their process, succeeded drastically in reducing their delay to give the information of consumption of fabric as well as their stock of raw material for the prototypes. It has been a tremendous change for them because they passed from 30 minutes to only 1 minute to give a better result. The second case I would like to talk about is when we open this new feature to pattern makers that never had access to this kind of tools. And now it's becoming very interesting because it had many impacts, whether in the process, but also in the results. It's a real change for them. First, it does not mean the pattern makers were very happy with it because it's a kind of extra task in their basket. But however, it gives also a visibility they never had. After implementing the quick offer, the pattern makers are able to estimate fabric consumption directly from Modaris, their pattern making solution, during the product development. And they can see directly the impact of their modification on the fabric consumption. This has opened new kind of feature and new kind of relationship internally at the customer we placed this new feature, such as Calzedonia, for example. First, they have seen that the process is faster because they don't have anymore to request to other people how much fabric they are able to consume. But also, they have been able to realize that they could do some small saving of fabrics just by design without any compromise on the style itself. And they were able to challenge also the designers and to create a new discussion. They were able to adapt the products earlier, meaning that they were able to control better the costs related to the fabrics. But it has a direct impact in terms of savings and in terms of sustainability, because all the savings you're doing there, you don't have to do it anymore in the late process. And there's a big difference between doing a consumption to create your own product with some goals in terms of sustainability versus optimizing something that you cannot change in the end of the process. And this is directly in line with the objective that tries to implement some companies such as H&M or Decathlon. They have launched this type of initiative of zero-waste design or optimized design. This type of tool completely supports this approach since each designer is able to see directly what are the impacts of the modification he's doing. And so it means that thinking minimal waste from the design phase changed drastically the approach in terms of sustainability. In the same way, for companies that are not necessarily in that process or in that goal of sustainability, it also has some good impacts. Indeed, when you are able to get faster and an immediate answer about your fabric consumption, if you see that the fabric consumption is too high, you will not request to your suppliers new prototypes because you already know that it will not meet your expectations. And if we look at the impact of carbon cost just to manage the prototypes, there's also a tremendous potential in being more efficient with our prototypes. The exchange with FedEx is just enormous during all of these design phases. And it's interesting in terms of innovation because it's a win-win for companies. By taking better account the design impacts in the product design, they make money while meeting their sustainability goals. So it's very, very important. Again, the tools we presented are only part of the process and needs to be combined with an eco-design methodology or initiative to reuse as much as possible, as much waste as possible, as the example we have seen. Normally, we should have had the testimony of H&M today to have a better visibility on their strategy and how they are using our tools into their framework. Unfortunately, we had some issue and they are not available. They are start to integrate the control of material estimate from the design phase of creation of the pattern in order to be able to enter in this step of eco-design. The conclusion of their journey so far is that the cloud helps to give the tools to your team to think differently and integrate sustainability goals into their daily job. It's, for example, what is doing currently Decathlon as well, integrating minimal waste methodology at their daily work. And it is the conjunction of this tool and this kind of methodology that allows us to change things. This allows to reduce waste. And you have other kind of consulting approach that also helps in the same way, such as residue offer, for example, because what we have seen here is that approximately 80% of the total textile production is based on this principle of cutting parts from a flat material, whereby the parts are arranged manually or automatically in a cutting plan in order to save as much space as possible. Due to the principle, an efficiency is approximately today 75 to 85%, which means that 15 to 25% of these materials is waste. With methodologies such proposed by Residue, we can optimize this and take into account those waste grid in order to make it more efficient. So I'm at the end of my speech, and I'm okay to take any question if there are some.
Roberto, yes, there are questions. Thank you ever so much for that. I'm there writing notes, trying to keep up with it. But before I go on to my questions, I've got a couple of questions coming in. Frank has asked, how is the impact of having your technology implemented in one's processes on bundle size, material flow, in lines, warehouse serving, cutting tables? So if we use this Lectra software, what type of change is it actually going to produce? How would you sum up what benefits and efficiencies it's going to result in?
In very short words, first, a better efficiency in terms of usage of the fabric because of the computation, and then more access to people. That it means that a better visibility since the beginning of the process. It means that anyone that has access to this tool is able to get an information and take decision more accurate based on that.
Okay. So the level of knowledge will increase, which will allow you to make a better decision.
Exactly.
Now, before I get on to the second question, the question line's still open. If anyone wants to pick on Roberto, I think you've demonstrated in the last 35 minutes, you really know what you're talking about. This is a field that I am not comfortable in, but you've explained it in a simple way so that I can understand, and it makes a lot more sense. But if people who are viewing this have questions, go to the Slido part. Either it's on the right-hand side of where this screen is, or underneath our screens, there's a button that says View More. Press that and it will come up. Or you can do it via the main menu on the left-hand side. But the other question is, do you see any correlation between average order quantities versus styles and realized final benefit on time and material cost savings? So if you take a bigger perspective from before they used this lecture system to afterwards, how much is the change? Are we talking 1 or 2%? Are we talking about, is there a figure that can be quantified, or do we just look at it as all the people now on the flow do not have grey hair?
Both, in fact. We can
So
quantify.
it's too late for me, you mean?
Yeah, too late for me also as well. But in fact, both, because we are able to quantify by doing some benchmark and comparing the solution. Today, the fashion brands and the sportswear companies, they already have such tools because they need to have it. And what we do is that we do some benchmark to compare their results with ours. And so here we have a tangible information on how much fabric we are able to save compared to the solution. It can happen on some specific product that it's same. It can happen. But most of the time, we are able to demonstrate some saving there. But also, this is when you are just comparing purely the data. The real life is that you receive orders or you receive information or you receive tasks to do, not in a flow. It's always a mountain that comes at once and you need to deal with it. And because the way the current tools are done, you need to choose between do I spend time or do I respond in time? And if you want to respond in time because you have a lot coming at once, it means that you reduces your power of calculation by lower the time. And this has a side effect that is more difficult to check, or only by comparing the reality during 1 month, maybe. But by default, you decrease your efficiency.
Yes.
Also, when you are in the cloud, as you can process as many as you want in parallel, then you don't have to care anymore about these kind of things. So your gray hair, still, they stay gray, but you're more healthy at the end.
Okay. Now, with the fact that we're using the cloud, this presumably means that when you're reassigning work, everyone can access the same information in real time. So if you have a sudden increase in order or even a sudden decrease, you're able to adjust it almost back to root, almost back to the ingredient source. And that saves a lot of, I mean, I'm sure your business day is like mine. I spend far too much time on communication because I have to tell everyone everything rather than everyone going and getting the same information.
Yeah, exactly. And it's even more true when you have multiple plants. There are some companies that have different area of production. And as I said, the efficiency is linked to your computer and the user also that is using it. It means that if you have 3 different places with 3 different computers, you might have 3 different kind of results. With the cloud, you are able to monitor all the plants at once, the same way as you were thinking, but at the same time to level up all the efficiency with the highest efficiency possible. This is also something that is interesting.
No, that makes an awful lot more sense. And in fact, you've just answered the question I was going to ask you. So we're now at the point where, we've used up all the questions. Is there anything you would like to say as a closing statement, Roberto?
No, once again, what is important to have in mind is that this is a part of a global thing and a global behavior. When we are talking about sustainability, the reduction of usage of the fabric is key, and there is multiple ways to come with it. What we are offering is not a kind of a magic tool, but it's a way to control that what you are going to do has a clear impact on the rest. And everything that you don't consume from the beginning will not be used at the end. And this is really important in terms of idea.
Okay, that makes an awful lot of sense to me. I hope it makes sense to our audience as well. I hope also that if people are emailing in, asking you direct questions, wanting to take the conversation forward, you're very happy to host them. Your email address will be on the Performance Stage website somewhere, won't it, Lena? He says subtly. Thank you for your time. I'm going to wave goodbye to you now, and I'm going to talk about what's going on tomorrow. So thank you very much, Roberto.
Thank you. Bye.